All right, well, starting off this hour, Reverend Jesse Jackson has made quite an impact on the U.S. throughout the years. You probably know his name from his many crusades for human rights, so much so that he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize this year. His latest deed is brokering an agreement for the release of two imprisoned American citizens from prison in Gambia. The dual citizens were serving sentences for treason. To talk about this and more, Reverend Jesse Jackson joins us now. He's the founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition. Thank you for joining us, Reverend Jackson. So let's start off by talking about the two Gambian Americans you helped free from prison. Can you tell us about that?
It's a good news story. We heard about 3 weeks ago that 9 Gambians have been executed and 38 more were to be executed based upon their definition of what was a capital offense. And so I immediately called the president's office in the Gambia, called President Jimmy, with whom I had met and known across the years, and I asked that we bring a delegation to meet with him. And the foreign minister called back and said we would be allowed such a meeting. He did a temporary halt of executions on Friday 2 weeks ago, and then in our meeting, a 5-hour meeting, he decided 2 things. One, an indefinite moratorium on execution. So 38 lives that would have been lost have not been spared, and 2 Americans were pardoned and 2 Gambians. So in all, 38 people's lives have been spared and 4 have been pardoned from prison. I want to thank him because he had the choice and the power to take their lives, but he made a choice, I think, in the best sense of Gambia and the people.
And what inspired you to get involved in this, in Gambia and these cases in particular?
Well, across the years, we were trying to get prisoners out of Syria, Cuba, Iraq, Yugoslavia, Liberia, because we wanted to, and we tried, we took the risk. I know that gap between governments often not communicating with each other as they ought to communicate with each other, sometimes hostile relations. We made a humanitarian plea. Our plea was not based upon arguing sovereignty or based upon arguing the law, or arguing government relations. It was a humanitarian plea that, given what some good things are happening in the government under his leadership, for example, a building an educational system now, and it's free, and about half women are being educated, and that's a step in the right direction. The healthcare system now is that it's 8 hospitals now, and you see the growth of the hospitals, and medicine and medical care is free. They're building on the ocean front in the Gambia. But all of that is, in fact, distracted by the issue of killings and jailings. And so opening up access to free press, opening up, pardoning some prisoners, and stopping the execution is the right thing to do. It's also a very practical, beneficial thing. I thank the president, really, for making that judgment. We tried to get our own government to not kill Troy Davis in Georgia, or the governor to not do it in Oklahoma, in Texas, or in California. We were not successful here. We were successful in the Gambia.
We followed that Troy Davis case quite closely. So let me ask you this. What were the circumstances that led up to this point in Gambia with all the number of executions? You said that the 2 were on trial or being held for treason. So let me ask you how the circumstances led up to this point and how you were able to broker the deal.
You know, the bar for treason kind of varies. Sometimes it is opposition. Sometimes it is different offenses. We did not go in to argue the case of what was treasonable or not, which is like a legal argument, or his rights, which is like a sovereign argument. We made a humanitarian plea. And since I had met with the president on other occasions in various African Union meetings, he accepted our plea. All I really know is that 38 were scheduled to die are now scheduled to live, and 2 were scheduled to be in prison for a long time are now home with their families. I hope that the success of this will be of such until we'll be able to get more prisoners out of prison and spend more time on continuous economic and health care development in that country. Gambia deserves it. The president has the power really to make it happen. So again, we thank him for what he has done.
And I know that Barack Obama has actually ramped up U.S. involvement in Africa. So let's go ahead and switch gears just a little bit and talk about this. He's ramped up this involvement to go after the Lord's Resistance Army and Joseph Kony in particular in Central Africa. Now, this is the army the group Invisible Children and many others have been campaigning against. What are your thoughts about this increased presence in the region and in this continent?
Well, do let me say, I forgot to mention that the Gambia is 90% Muslim. And Muslim and Christians are coexisting very well there. They're relating together, they're politicking together, they're intermarrying. And so, with all the tensions around the U.S. embassies and Muslims around the world, in the Gambia, that is not the case. And that is a good sign of a chance for development, because as you know, there's not very much investment where there's violence and uproar and hostility. And so that's a good sign. I think that in those other countries, the U.S. has a presence if it's with the permission of the government. It's all right. If it's against their will, the use of intelligence devices and the use of drones are always questionable, but certainly they must be with the consent of the people who are involved.
And you were just talking about drones. Now, President Obama has become known as the drone president. And one of the platforms that President Obama is really ramping up in these elections, these 2012 elections, is his foreign policy experience. He is, after all, the person that caught and killed Osama bin Laden. Now, Mitt Romney, on the other hand, has no foreign policy experience. The visit he did with Israel and the UK, you know, America's closest allies, they didn't go well, and those are our friends. So is this a positive for Team Obama or just a negative for America as a whole that neither one of these men really have the type of foreign policy experience that maybe America needs at this point, especially considering everything that's going on in the Middle East and all the anti-American sentiments?
President Obama campaign on the war in Iraq was a bad idea. We went in there on false information. We lost lives and money and honor. $1 to $3 trillion was spent on that war, a very expensive war, and it was the wrong target. What could $1 trillion do today? Wipe out every state budget deficit, rehire police, teachers, firemen. But 100,000 troops in Iraq are home now, and that is a victory. Those in Afghanistan are on the way out of there now, and that's another step in the right direction. And so I see the attempt to move the needle against unnecessary, expensive wars in the region. I do think that now the Middle East issue has come front and center again because Netanyahu has injected himself in the middle of the campaign. So today, President Barack is talking with him by phone. Mr. Romney is talking with him by phone. It puts Mr. Netanyahu in an interesting position of having the president and his opposition talking with him about their policy. I hope that they will talk it out and not bomb it out. We do not need to expand the war zone in the Middle East.
Well, we all know that tensions between Israel and Iran are at a critical point. Netanyahu did do a pretty good job of drawing that red line at the UN General Assembly. Now, we also just found out that the Mitt Romney foreign policy team recommended he reversed Obama's 2009 executive order that outlaws torture. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the torture tactics tend to hurt us, and the assassination tactics hurt us. One thing that happened in the case of trying to get the Americans, these Desert Storm vet and the University of Tennessee vet teacher out of the Gambia, was we couldn't very well argue against capital punishment because we do the most of it. We couldn't necessarily argue against locking up unnecessarily innocent people because we do a lot. So when we engage in tactics of torture, the assassination, we undermine our own moral authority. And your policy must be based upon what's right, not just might. You cannot just use weapons in every event. It's your own behavior at home, whether you're believable or not around the world.
And Reverend Jackson, for the first time possibly ever, we have two men that are running against one another that have no military experience whatsoever. Mitt Romney's a businessman. Barack Obama, he's definitely got a bunch of experience as far as working within Congress goes, but not necessarily with militaries. We're still in Afghanistan and Pakistan, plus we're engaged in targeted strikes elsewhere. So from a foreign policy standpoint, is this a recipe for disaster with these two candidates?
Not necessarily. Bill Clinton didn't have military experience, for example, when he was president twice. Bush did not have it. But the fact is, you now have two men who hopefully will make some wise choices. And the choices may not be military choices. I hope that we cannot find our way out of the crisis in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. It's going to take strong diplomacy and really multilateral cooperation. We cannot go it alone. In many ways, we went it alone in Iraq. It was the cover of coalition, but we went in there basically Bush and Blair alone, and they were wrong. And now we paid a big price for it. We must learn from the Iraq lesson. We went into Libya in the name of trying to stop the spread of terrorism, end up now with a very unstable government in Libya. So hopefully the chaos that we're now experiencing will be lessons learned as to not to go further in this direction.
All right, Reverend Jesse Jackson, we really appreciate your time today, sir. Reverend Jackson is the founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition. He's also turning 71 on October 8th, so a very happy early birthday to you, sir.
Thank you.